Okay, excellent. Welcome, colleagues, to the Global Coalition meeting to address synthetic drug threats. This is the July session of the East Group, Sub-Working Group 1.1. I'm Brian Morales, and I'd like to welcome you from the windy city of Chicago, Illinois. We had 10 tornadoes touch down yesterday, which was a record for the city. So indeed, it holds up to its name. And we've got Bill McGlynn from Los Angeles, California. And we've got a big INL team from the East Coast with us from Washington, D.C. also. It's my pleasure to welcome you, and I have some administrative announcements to get us started for today. We've had quite a momentous few weeks with a global coalition, many activities and events. If we can move to the next slide, I'll share with you that from June 24th to the 28th, we had over 1,000 participants that came together from the substance use field in the city of Thessaloniki in Greece to participate in over 30 trainings, events, and other activities as part of the workshops of the International Society of Substance Use Professionals, or ISUP. This is a society that comes together on an annual basis, and synthetic drugs was a big topic for the coalition, for the sessions this year, and the coalition was also discussed, which I'll speak about in a minute. I want to, before moving to the next slide, also mention that we celebrated on the 26th of June World Drug Day, and we also saw the launch of the new World Drug Report. So I want to encourage you all to please go to UNODC's website and look at the latest data from the World Drug Report if you have not done so already, particularly the sections on synthetic drugs. Then on July 7th, we celebrated the one-year anniversary of the ministerial meeting that launched this global coalition. And we were very happy to take note and did a lot of promotion through social media of that one-year anniversary. Now, if we go to the next slide, we also wanted to highlight that we were very fortunate to be able to, on the margins of the ISUP meeting, convene the co-chairs meeting from June 24th to 25th, where we were able to bring together 30 out of the 40 co-chairs to meet in person and to discuss future pathways for the coalition. And I have a video to share with you all on that event, which we can play at the end of this presentation of the administrative announcements. But we also had international organization staff that participated, and it was a great opportunity. Next slide, please. We have a bit more on this. So the co-chairs were able to discuss progress and actions that countries have taken, next steps for the coalition. Also, in Greece, we found that there are several future actions that we can take, such as the creation of some international mechanisms for coordination of donor support. That's one of our big conclusions, that we'll be looking to organize a donor coordination meeting in Vienna over the coming weeks to be able to, or coming months, to be able to better see how we can support the demand that the coalition has raised in terms of interest. And also there's discussions of an enhanced control of chemical and precursors used to manufacture synthetic drugs, as well as another area of interest. If we can go to the next slide, please. We also launched at this ISUP meeting a global recovery network. And this is very relevant as one of the recommendations for 3.2. Recovery is a field that is not well understood, and yet it is an essential part of addressing substance use and substance use disorders. So we were very excited to see a new recovery network formed that is giving definition and structure, and also providing some space for the recovery community to develop at the grassroots level, and to provide mentorship and support for that. And in addition to that, if we go to the next slide, we also had the launch of the Global Women's Network, which is a network for the provider of women's treatment and recovery services for substance use and substance use disorders. and it was a great celebration. This network will be very relevant and helpful for the workforce in being able to give specialized care for women in treatment and in recovery. Next slide, please. And we also want to take this opportunity to celebrate and congratulate the transition of EMCDDA into the new European Union Drugs Agency, EUDA. This is a great also achievement. We're very excited in the framework of the coalition to collaborate with EUDA on synthetic drugs and to partner in the numerous ways. We've invited and encouraged EUDA also to deliver some presentations to us over the coming months to learn better sort of future plans and strategies. Next slide, please. And I want to take the opportunity once again for those partners who have not yet done so to let you all know that we still have open and still are welcoming your reports and your feedback in terms of how your country looks forward to participating in the coalition for the coming year. You can adopt a new practice, policy, strategy, regulation, or law. You can launch new engagement or collaboration with the private sector. You can provide financial support or in-kind assistance. You can host regional or global meetings. You can express interest in specific initiatives of the menu that is on the website under the Initiatives tab. And there's contact information, and you can just express interest directly to the contact information in those links. Or any other act that you feel will strengthen your country's response to synthetic drugs, we invite you to share that information with us. Next slide. We continue to welcome reports up to 2 pages in length in the format of Word, Microsoft Word, or by email. And the deadline was June 3rd, but we will continue to accept submissions to the email address syntheticscoalition@state.gov. Next slide. And so the plan for the coming months, we have programmatic implementation and coalition action planning as the topics for this month of July that we're broadly looking at across all sub-working groups. In August, we will be focusing on monitoring and evaluation and sustainability of the coalition. And we encourage you all to come prepared to also share specific initiatives that your country is committed to carrying forward in year 2. We have now received many reports at this point from many countries. So we would invite you to provide us a verbal brief or summary of the areas of work in the August session as well. And then in September, we will have the co-chairs of the sub-working groups report to the co-chairs of the working groups what the plans are for the coming year and conclusions for this first year of the coalition. Then in October, we will not have any more of these monthly meetings, but we will focus much more operationally on a very limited sort of set of programs going forward and actions. Next slide. Okay, thank you for your collaboration once again. I'm now going to ask Henki to please cue the video, play the video for us of the Global Coalition meeting of co-chairs that we had in the month of June in Greece, so that everybody can get a sense of what happened at that time. Thank you. Welcome everybody to the Global Coalition meeting. It's incredible to be here in person. With the pandemic, we all started using screens more and more, and now it's not unusual to have a whole year go by without seeing people in person. But it feels a little bit like Hollywood when you start to see people that you've been seeing on the screen now come to life, and now we're all here in one room. It's quite special. Thank you so much for making the journey.
I can't tell you what a great honor it is for me to be in this room with so many experts from so many different parts of your governments. I am happy to have the opportunity to thank you in person for everything that you have been doing over the past year.
I believe it is important that participant countries reflect on and communicate what their own objectives are as part of the Global Coalition. and what they want to achieve over the next 12 months.
I urge us to invest in the hard work of building and supporting capacity in less developed parts of the world. This will require time, building relationships, face-to-face visits, and follow-up meetings.
Every country has challenges, they're just different ones. With synthetic drugs, there are a lot of lessons we can learn from other countries because of their experiences, and no one country can solve this alone. It is a challenge that faces all of us, and whether it's fentanyl or some other drug, in addition to plant-based drugs, we all share the same threat and we have to work together. So our goal for the launch of the coalition last July, which would be 1 year and a week, was to get 50 countries together. We ended up getting 80 countries and 11 international organizations. And now there are 156 countries and 15 different international organizations. And that is because of you all. President Biden has now requested $24 billion just for domestic treatment programs at home. We now have a medical doctor who's the head of the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy. And all of this really is because of the things that you have done.
To keep the momentum going, to make sure that this attention to the change.
The structure created strike a balance between treatment and prevention.
If you put all these intelligence minds together, you can't go wrong here.
The International Society of Substance Use Professionals, the exchange between national chapters is fantastic. But when we come together, there's a magic. There's an energy that happens when people are together in the same room.
I would like to formally launch the Global Recovery Network.
Recovery is part of the whole continuum of care, and that's why it's a very important component in this conference.
The Global Women's Network represents one of the first outcomes from the Global Coalition's working group.
Because it gives providers from prevention to treatment to recovery that are working with women a place to call home, a place to find their face, their voice, their like-minded spirits within this larger conference.
So one thing that I think the coalition needs to do is start looking at some of these issues that are challenging us outside the box.
Okay, thank you very much for the video. Now I want to turn it over to Monica Ashish Batra, our co-chair from India, to get us started with today's session. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. And it was so lovely to see the video. And I was, in fact, seeing all the faces which I met. It was really nice. Thank you so much for organizing the event. It was wonderful. And we had a very good interaction sessions also. And we felt that there is a need for, as we were talking in the video also, there's a need for more face-to-face interactions. And with that, saying that, I think we should progress with our reports. And I would also request all the participants that whatever are the reports from their country should be sent as soon as possible so that a consolidated report can be prepared. Thank you so much, Brian.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Sarah, do you want to introduce what we have first on the agenda today?
Absolutely. We have a presentation from Kepler from their North American department on global trade intelligence. Henki, if you could cue that up for us, that'd be wonderful. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone is having a wonderful morning/evening, depending on what time zone you're in. My name is Brian Kiesecker. I'm here with my esteemed colleague, Kevin Kinney. We represent a company called Kepler, really it's a commercial maritime intelligence provider. We're extremely excited and very grateful to be working with State Department's INL and this global coalition, namely around the power of maritime data in the fight against global narcotics trafficking, with the emphasis on fentanyl and some of the precursors and shipments, and looking at how do we track that, how do we illuminate that dark vessel activity and the shipments coming from China and going abroad. We're going to take a deeper dive into that today. before we do, we'll start with introductions. I've been around this world for about 24 years, mostly selling to the DoD and IC. I spent a few years at Fort Meade as an analyst. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Kevin, to give a brief introduction.
Thank you, Brian. My name's Kevin Knee, and I'm with Kepler. I'm a U.S. National Security Liaison Officer, and I'm a new addition here at Kepler. I spent just under 26 years in the United States government. I was a special agent with Homeland Security Investigations, where my primary focus is working narcotics, and I spent the last 3 years of my career as a supervisor with OCDF, the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Forces. And just before retirement, I was out as a section chief at the OCDF Fusion Center, where I sat over the CPOT unit, the Fugitive Location Unit, and the Coast Guard unit. So thank you very much, Brian, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you, and we're super excited to have you aboard. So a little bit about the company, and I think the reason that INL kind of really asked us to come on board was kind of providing insight to the greater community about the types of commercial data that's available that people may not realize that it's out there, and the way in which you can pull those data sets together to paint a broader picture of drug distribution networks, global flows, all of those type of things. The company itself, Kepler, we've been around for over 10 years now. We started back in 2014. Our co-founders, Jean Manier and Francois César. I think I got their names right, guys. If I didn't, I apologize. Super smart engineers that kind of realized that they wanted to build a Bloomberg terminal for the commodities world. It really was something that wasn't around at the time. So they started building this software and data as a service model for liquefied natural gas. It went really well, and kind of the core ethos of the company then was to find these hard to access obscure data sets, make real-time actionable intelligence from them, and present that to commodity traders so they have real-time insights so they can make necessary trades and just have that real-time information flow. 10 years went by. We now have visibility on anything that's bought, sold, traded, and moved on the water. So throughout the first 8 years of our company, we were a large AIS provider, or AIS consumer. A year and a half ago, Kepler went ahead and bought Marine Traffic and Fleetmon for the AIS coverage. So now we brought that into our broader scope of capabilities. So of the 9,000 AIS stations globally available, we own 6,600 and have access to an additional 1,500. So we own and or have access to over 8,000 of the 9,000 AIS stations. And no one from the industry's perspective has the amount of AIS coverage. That's both globally, satellite, terrestrial, or roaming. But that's just one part of the capability. So when you're looking at a broad picture of the types of data that we have, think about the AIS coverage as our open source intelligence. That's the open source part of how we track vessels, cargo, port information. We're collecting all of that. But we all know that the criminals love to obfuscate their activity, turn off those AIS signals. They like to put misinformation, disinformation on bills of lading. So the second part of our data set, and again, Kevin's going to show this visually, is a large global data set of sensitive commercial data that we get from partners around the world. That's in hard target regions back to North America. So that gives us insights into this bill of lading says this document says another thing. So we pair that data and give you the most accurate real-time snapshot of what's on the ship, where that ship has been, where that ship is supposed to be going, and that type of information. The third layer that we have is actually the human information network at every major port in the world. So even though there's bill of lading, there's sensitive information that we have, and then we have eyes on the ground that say, hey, this is what's really transpiring. And we put all of that into a data model. We push that back out real time. And this commercial capability gives you, the analyst or the investigative unit, a real clear picture and a very accurate picture of what's on the ship, where that ship has been, and all the relevant maritime information you may want. So with that, That's kind of the broad high level picture of what we do and the types of data that we collect for, public sector clients around the world. And that's North America, our 5 partners. We've got a great working relationship with all of those, and that's growing as we build our company out. But I'm going to turn it over to Kevin to go through a couple different examples to show you visually the types of workflows that you can do and the types of things you can see with this type of commercial data. So over to you, Kevin.
All right, thank you, Brian. So with that being said, one thing that I noticed in my career working narcotics is that you can't trust bad guys. It's really hard to track what they're going to be doing. But one thing that we can learn from is their past course of life and what they've done through their past patterns. So as we use our database, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We share our database. One thing that I want to really get into and show you right off the bat will be the port of Manzanilla in Mexico. When we start really talking about things that are, hot button items right now or hot topic items, and it's going to be precursors for fentanyl and fentanyl itself. So what we've seen is that there's been an abundance of chemicals coming from China. And one of the places that we've seen it's really coming into North America is it's hitting Mexico and then traveling up through our southern borders here into the US. But when you use our system, you can go into the port of Manzanilla and you can really dial down and dig into the different ships that are there. And one thing that is really helpful with our system is to then be able to go into, and I'm going to say this is, it's going to be more for targeting, is you can go into past seizures and then look at ships or different containers, different vessels that were in the port around the same time of those seizures. So as you're looking at my screen, you're going to see that I'm looking at different at the port, but then you can also pull up port calls that were made there, the different ships that were in that port, different trades that occurred. And it's one way that you can really dig into the different ships that are there. Another targeting method that we have with this system is we can go in and we can see the different chemicals that are coming in from different parts of the world. So we'll go into fertilizers and we'll just look at the monthly exports of fertilizers over the past 2 years. So with that, you can really dig deep into this and see the different fertilizers that are being shipped around the world. So to go even further into that, we'll pull back up Manzanilla. And this will give us a better dive into that. So with that, we can then target even more ships, get closer to that. To finding possibly a source ship. Another thing that I would show would be where it's coming from, which will be, let's use China. So we see all the exports of fertilizers coming from China. So this is another way that you can use the system to really start identifying shipments or cargo that you want to start targeting. But as we move through this, there's a couple things I want to talk about, but it really gets into the fact that sometimes you're not going to be able to identify what is on these ships, or you're not going to be able to see the illegal commodity, but you will be able to see the ship that is in port at the time. So it'll help you work back to your drug trafficking organization. We have another vessel that I want to pull up and just show you where it is coming from. So as we look at this ship that we're targeting, the Rihanna Breeze, we can see that right now it's in South America and it's destined based on the port calls to head to Manzanillo. And it will be carrying fertilizers. So this would be something that if you're targeting in Manzanillo right now at the port, this would be something to keep your eye on and have a boarding team ready or have someone ready to go do further inspection on this vessel as it gets into port. All right, so this is when we go back to our terminal and we go to our main screen and we come down and we've got a compliance tab, which we just added back in June. And what this allows us to do is really focus on different vessels, companies that may be affected or that are affected by different sanctions through OFAC, in different, the EU. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up the first one here, which is the Abyss. Brian, can you see this now still?
Sir, yep.
Okay. So as we see, I went with the first one on our compliance tab, and it's the Abyss. And one thing that you'll see on this is just like any other vessel, you'll see voyages, you'll see where, the ship has gone from. You'll see port calls, you'll see trades, but the newest tab that we have is compliance. And what this will show you, and when you're targeting or you're looking at past history of these vessels, is you've got the sanctions list. You can pull up and you'll see that this vessel is sanctioned under OFAC. And if you click on this hyperlink, it'll take you actually to the OFAC page, and you'll be able to see, you know, why the ship is sanctioned by OFAC, and it'll help you when it comes to targeting. But there's different things underneath the risk and compliance tab that are very helpful in the marine world or the marine space. You have the cargo. With this one, you have sanctioned cargo, and it shows where it's coming from. And you're going to see a lot with this tab. A lot of our cargo is going to be sanctioned cargo coming from Iran or Venezuela. So this is one spot. Different trades that may be sanctioned, the ownership, and just like I showed you earlier with the vessel tab, this shows the ownership and who it's sanctioned and or why it's sanctioned, or like the company how it's sanctioned and how it's sanctioned through OFAC or the EU. So it's just a quick, easy way to really get the details of why this company is sanctioned. Right now, there's no flag issues, but it comes through. You run through classification, the insurance, ISM manager, port state control inspections, which this is actually really helpful when it comes to narcotics, because it'll tell you when it was pulled aside for port state inspections and what was found. So there's different ways that you can go in here, you know, and utilize this as it comes to targeting narcotics. And then the last ship that I wanted to show that's coming from a source country, I'm sorry. Are you seeing this, Brian?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this ship is currently in Venezuela. Or excuse me, it came from Venezuela, and it is in, I believe, over in Africa at this point. But what you're able to see are the different port calls. And right now, this vessel is dealing with Venezuela. So that's why it's red. Any sort of interaction with Venezuela at this point falls under a compliance tab when it comes to sanctioned cargo. And it's going to be carrying sanctioned cargo from Venezuela. But this is the reason why I bring it up from Venezuela, is that's a source country when it comes to narcotics and going to North America and even over to Europe. So those are things that will help you when it comes to targeting different vessels and making decisions on who you should go after and start looking and paying more attention to. So Brian, is there anything else you think that would be helpful for a dig?
No, I think, I mean, it's pretty comprehensive. I think it shows the best types of data that you can get commercially, whether it's through our platform or maybe others. But from what we've seen in the industry, I don't think anyone's combined the open source with the sensitive trade data on top of that human element. And just based on your past history, I think there's a reason you came over. And there's such a power in the unclassified open source world, whether that's dealing with, you know, allied partners and being able to quickly disseminate and parse through and send out real-time information, not having to you know, utilize these classified systems, which not many people have access to. So there's just so much power in the open source.
And Brian, one thing I didn't hit on is with the parasitic containers that are sometimes welded onto these ships. A lot of times the crew that runs the ships that are in charge of the vessels are not part of the conspiracy. However, there's going to be a low-level crew member that may be working for a drug trafficking organization that is then having a dive team weld a parasitic container on the side of these vessels. And if it happens once, it'll happen 5 times. So it helps go back and build that pattern of life once you see that. So if you have source information at different ports of entry, there's a parasitic submarine or something attached to the side of the ship, this is something where we can also go back in and start tracking those ships, because it'll stop somewhere where that's happening at a different port. So just something else I wanted to add where this system comes in very helpful.
100%. And even we only had 10 minutes. We really try to condense all this information. At the end of this presentation, you're going to have a contact card. Reach out to us. We're happy to walk you through briefings. You know, we really do pride ourselves in being good mission partners with public sector and commercial entities. One thing I'll even say from a call I had with a specific U.S. government organization this morning was looking at tracking containers. We have the capability that you can actually, if you have a bill of lading or some container number, we're showing you not only where that container's been, where it's going, but to Kevin's point, pattern deviations. Why did this specific ship with this piece of cargo, with this container, come in 2 weeks early? Why did it sit there for so long? That's abnormal. That's an abnormal behavior. So we're able to detect those deviations in normal routines. A cargo ship that stops mid-ocean, that typically doesn't happen. That should cause a red alert. We can show you that the type of data that we collect and the way in which we parse through that data, we can show you those deviations in normal patterns that allows you to, from a lead generation perspective or a targeting effort, to understand I should probably look further into the ship, who's on board, the counterparties involved in the trades. All of that type of information is available in the commercial world. And we hope that this 10 minutes or however many minutes it's been kind of gives you a glimpse into that world. Thank you, Kevin, for your time. Anything else?
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's good. Like I said, please reach out to us. We have people located throughout the world, whether it's here in the U.S., Brussels. We have a main base of operations in London. We've got people in Asia Pac, all around the world, 24/7. We're always scouring through bills of lading and providing our clients real-time insights into global trade flows. So at that, thank you so much for your time. And please reach out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you very much for that first presentation. I just want to highlight, before I turn it over to Sarah for introducing the next presentation, we, at the end of this, we'll have a discussion phase like we normally do, but then also with the benefit of having some of the co-chairs here that attended the meeting in Greece, we could also catch up on providing a bit more of a readout and impressions. So I just wanted to prepare the co-chairs and invite them during the comment period if they wanted to also provide some feedback in terms of their impressions, their thoughts from the meeting in Greece, and we can do the same, those of us that are on the line that attended the meeting. So with that, over to you, Sarah, and let Henki know also when to stop the recording. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Brian, for the heads up. Henki, yeah, we can stop the recording right now. Right now.